Hello there, my name's Disaster Area, and I'm here to narrate the World Championship Finals between Marcoasd and Bedschibaer. So the metagame is RBY 1U, otherwise known as Overused. Two great players, Marcoasd dominant for a very long time, Pokemon Perfect, but he's semi-retired now, so he's not been playing the Master Tournaments this season, but he has been playing the World Championship, which he's reached the finals in, whilst Bedschibaer has been playing in the season's Master Tournaments, and he's been doing very well lately. So it's a very exciting final. The World Championship format's a really awesome one because it has group stages up until before the semi-finals, and that means that generally the better players are the only ones to get ahead. There's fewer flukes, so it was very tough from the final 8, and even in some ways from the second round onwards, to get very far. I was quite happy to make the third round myself, and then I happened to lose to Bedschibaer and someone else, so blush. Let's begin. This isn't live, and I do unfortunately know the overall result, although I don't know who won which games. But I will not tell you what the result is. You'll have to watch to find out. Alright, so let's begin. Alright, we start off with Alakazam and Starmie. So the normal play here, it does depend player by player, so it's interesting to see who stays in and what, but some players don't like their Starmie or their Alakazam paralysed, so one or both might switch out. The Starmie player has more options since Exeggutor can come out into Alakazam quite comfortably, because lead Starmie usually carries Blizzard and Psychic. Normally Exeggutor doesn't want to come into that, although Chansey could have come in on either side if either player wanted their Chansey paralysed instead, although that has both its upsides and downsides, which I probably will get into later anyway. So we see them trading paralysis on the first turn, which means that both of these Pokemon can probably effectively block sleep, but it does depend on specific sets of Exeggutors and possibly other sleepers such as Victory Bell, Lapras, Sing Chansey and others. So we'll see what happens. But Alakazam's probably the more vulnerable Pokemon whilst paralysed to stuff like Tauros, due to its lower physical defense, but on the other hand, Starmie has certain weaknesses, which means stuff like Chansey can force out Starmie, whereas it can't force out Alakazam. So it'll be interesting to see how each player intends to capitalise on this, whether they're going to try and get sleep earlier in the game or later in the game, and how they intend to create pressure. So we see them both deciding to stay in. I'll put this down to normal, so that we don't get the first part of the next turn as well. But so they decide to stay in. Alakazam goes for the Thunder Wave, predicting a switch to Snorlax, while Starmie goes for a Psychic and gets a special drop, which lowers Alakazam's speed further as well as makes its Psychics less powerful. So it's a pretty good time for him to get a switch off, although he equally could have fired off another Psychic or Blizzard, and dealt some decent damage to the Alakazam and forced it to recover, which is what he's taking advantage of here to get his Snorlax in. We see a full paralysis, so we don't know what Bedschibaer would have done there. But now he's on the defensive. Since Body Slam doesn't paralyse normal types in RBY, he has a couple of options, the most obvious being Chansey, but also his own Snorlax, and a Golem, or in a less likely case a Rhydon can also work. Alakazam's not likely to have counter, and even if it does, it won't do all that much to Snorlax due to Snorlax's massive HP and Alakazam's low HP. So he's unlikely to Earthquake, so it means that if he brings in an Exeggutor or something else, we'll be taking quite a lot of damage and quite a lot of risk for not much upside. So we can expect to see probably a Snorlax or a Chansey or a Golem coming in here, and not likely to be anything else. We see a Chansey, and body slam from Snorlax is critical hits, which puts Chansey under a lot of pressure here. A Hyper Beam here would KO even after a soft boiled, which makes it risky for Chansey to stay in, although I think it may be a roll, but I don't believe that it is. So that puts the Snorlax in a very good position so far with an early game critical hit, which is about 1 in 20 chance given Lax's awful speed and how critical hits function in RBY. So see what Bedschibaer does here, but he's already on the back foot on turn 4 and it's a tricky situation. But he goes to Exeggutor, which would have been the correct response if he'd Hyper Beamed, but Marcoasd doesn't do that, instead goes for a body slam expecting the switch, since an 18% chance he can still definitely be healed up later, especially since it's so especially bulky, and that Starmie's already paralysed. So that means, yeah, train of thought going a little off. But yeah, the Snorlax doesn't come in very happily, but it at least comes in. Since chance is so useful, you do want to preserve it. But it could be very risky for Bedschibaer had it critical hit again or paralysed, and as we see, it didn't paralyse. So, question is, well, Marco's most likely response is to go Starmie here, since Exeggutor threatens Sleep Powder and Marco doesn't want his Lax Select, which would be very risky and lose him a lot of the possible tempo early on in the game, so it's very likely that he either goes to something to take sleep or he goes to Starmie to block sleep. Now the downside if he goes to Starmie is that then Chansey can come in, which is probably what he's doing here. Yeah, so if he has something which can take sleep, he might want to go with that instead, just to prevent Chansey from coming in and recovering and keeping the pressure from Bedschibaer. So let's see if he does that. So he goes to Chansey as Starmie comes in, and that's a safe soft-boiled, and Starmie goes for the Thunder Wave there, which makes Lax all the more dangerous, and he goes for a Psychic. So Chansey could well have Thunderbolt, but it's the most common move really for it to drop should it want to run something else, such as Counter or Sing, or if it's running a Reflect set, it's not running T-Bolt. So it's likely that it runs Thunderbolt here, but it's definitely possible that it isn't. So Psychic is an interesting move, since the special fall, which he did get, although he wasn't guaranteed to get, had a good chance, however, means that if he does happen to get hit by a Thunderbolt, which is unlikely a critical hit, then it only takes off about 33% with the Spec Fall. And given Chance's HP, it can also force a recover here a soft boiled here very early on, which gives the tempo back to Marco. He'll probably punish with Snorlax here, but it's we'll see whether Bedschibaer wants to react ahead of that, or if he wants to soft boiled with Chansey. Chances are he probably wants to soft boiled with Chansey, but that does give Snorlax some very much unwanted room. It's possible that he might Thunder Wave on the switch, but it would be risky, and he fully paralyzes. Chansey's in range of a Hyper Beam, but he doesn't really need to go for it here, since Thunder Waving there would be so risky, since that would leave him at about 10% on his paralyzed Chansey, assuming no critical hit, and only a 3 in 4 chance to get off a Thunder Wave, and the 10% Chansey that's paralyzed is a lot harder to soft boiled off. So we saw that coming, and he's punished very much for that full paralysis, leaving him at only about 50%, meaning that he can't. They'll be weaker next time he wants to come into Starmie, and easier to pressure with Lax later on. So does he go Exeggutor here, or does he have another response? No, he goes Exeggutor, which body slams again. Had it paralyzed, then Exeggutor would have been in Hyper Beam range. But luckily for Bedschibaer it didn't, as he's fast running out of responses for that Snorlax. And Starmie's likely to switch in again to take a sleep powder. We'll see how Beds responds. If he has Mega Drain, then this could well be a great time to use it, but he chooses not to reveal it. He goes Chansey on the Blizzard, which was very likely forthcoming. It helps to keep pressure on the Chansey whilst also hurting Exeggutor, which is very useful indeed here, since it means now he can go Snorlax again and keep up the pressure, since Beds doesn't really have a great response to it, given what's panned out so far this match and what appears to be a lack of a rock on Beds' side. There's not much information revealed on either side yet, but we can usually assume a lot about the teams. They'll usually have Snorlax, Chansey, Exeggutor, and Tauros, although sometimes they might drop one or two, and in very, very rare cases more than that. And the game can be played without revealing the 6th Pokemon on a team very easily, depends on the matchup and what it is, but is perfectly likely that they'll have something that they won't want to reveal until later on in the game, like a Slowbro or a Zapdos, or maybe something more creative. So anyway, so Starmie goes for that Blizzard on the Chansey, keeping the pressure up and making sure that Exeggutor doesn't want to stay in. Snorlax comes in, Chansey fully paralyzes again. Very punishing, another one of those. Which puts Bedschibaer in a bad spot. Let's see what he does here. Okay, he goes to his Snorlax, and yeah, that's his only real response at this point. Since it can't be paralyzed, it's okay if the match opponent does put the pressure on in return, but it does depend on the sets, and is worth thinking about that, as well as the fact that obviously with the Ditto, the person switching in is generally the one disadvantaged, which is definitely the case here. So we see an Earthquake there, scouting for a counter on Marcoasd's end. Meanwhile, we'll see Snorlax, Bedschibaer's own, going for Body Slam for as much damage as he can. We don't see Reflect on either side, which is still very much a possibility with only Body Slam revealed on either side and Earthquake on Marco's end as well. So we'll see if something new occurs this next turn, or if we see a self-destruct. No. It's worth noting that after 2 Body Slams even, Snorlax isn't in self-destruct range. So this is where things get kind of interesting. So Marco's Snorlax isn't in range of Hyper Beam, but it is in range of a self-destruct. Bedschibaer's Snorlax is in range of a Hyper Beam. So there's a case of, do they want to trade? If Marco had a Golem or a Rhydon on his side, it would have been the ideal time to switch to it, since it was very unlikely that Beds went for an Earthquake there, or let alone a Surf or a Blizzard. So a Body Slam. So yeah, Marco doesn't go for that, as we see. But Bedschibaer gets a critical hit, which is big, since it means that now Beds has a usable Snorlax, and Marco doesn't. Whereas Marco would have had the upper hand there, with his Snorlax, which Beds was struggling to respond to, which was giving him a great advantage, and now he needs to change his game plan, figure out how he's going to keep pressure upon that thankfully already weakened Chansey, and on the rest of his team as well. So he's got to go something faster here. The most obvious thing to do is Tauros. Alakazam can't switch into that. Chansey definitely can't switch into that. Exeggutor can't switch into that. That being a Hyper Beam, particularly. I don't believe that Snorlax is probably a roll for body slam from Taurus to kill it from memory. But Bedschibaer might have another response to Taurus body slam or hyper beam, but it's not likely. So Taurus is the most likely thing to go to, since it's the best thing to put the pressure back on here. It's not like it's a Pokemon that likes switching in anyway, and it's the best way of guaranteeing a revenge kill. So since although Taurus isn't too difficult to switch for a Pokemon to win versus one-on-one, it's a difficult Pokemon to switch into, so it's likely the Beds will sacrifice his Snorlax here to Taurus's attack. When we see Hyper Beam, it's worth also noting that that was a fairly safe Hyper Beam in a lot of ways, in that we expected that Bedschibaer wouldn't have a rock to switch into, although other punishes like a water or an electric for his 6th slot could well have been effective there. It's hard to really say. It does depend on Bedschibaer's team, but it was a somewhat safe play by Marco. I mean, if Bedschibaer wanted to switch into that in some way, with say a Slowbro or a Zapdos, and it had critical hit, in those two cases it wouldn't have one hit KO'd. Actually, maybe it would have with Zapdos, but yeah, even in that case, it would be heavy damage. So it would be beneficial later on in the game. Yeah, I mean, it did have a couple of risks, but as we see here, it paid off, since Bedschibaer decided it was best to make the sacrifice of Snorlax. So we'll see now what Bedschibaer opts to do to take down Marcoasd. Is likely chancy, although he's not revealed it yet. It's very likely that he has it, and we'll probably see it in the next couple of turns. And we'll also see what Beds' response is here. Alakazam can't be one hit KO by Taurus without a critical hit, and Body Slam is a roll to 2-hit KO, and Taurus dislikes paralysis. So Alakazam's a potential response, but he's either got to reveal that or reveal a new Pokemon. Taurus could come out here to force a Ditto, or a 6th Pokemon could come in useful here if he decides now is the opportunity to reveal it. So let's see what he does. We see Taurus, who decides to force the Ditto, decides to keep the information about what his last Pokemon is unrevealed. We'll see what happens here. But it's likely that Body Slam, or possibly a Blizzard slipped in somewhere, will be the move choice by both players, and then we will see if either player decides to absorb a Hyper Beam, or Blizzard goodness potential rocks each other. That's unlikely. So let's see what happens. Also, a critical hit from either side would massively put the tempo in one or another player's favour. Marcoasd gets it, which puts him in a strong position this game. I will say I know the overall results of the who wins overall. I don't know who wins each specific game, so I'll not reveal that to you. I meant to say that earlier, but I forgot, and then I realised I'd forgot something. But anyway, so let's see. What does Bedschibaer's probably got to go to his last, or go for a Hell for Leather Hyper Beam here, to try and remove this Taurus. Let's see what happens. He goes for a Hyper Beam, does not critical hit, but he does outspeed it. It suggests that Beds doesn't have a good response to it in the 6th slot. So let's to switch into Hyper Beam. So let's see, what does he bring out? He brings out Lapras, which would have been okay, but he desperately wanted it to be somewhat healthy to be able to take on Chansey later. Since he got the Hyper Beam off there, Taurus is low enough that even a Chansey Ice Beam could kill it. So that Taurus isn't switching in onto any attacks again. And although it probably will be kept, so what's likely to happen is it will be kept to clean up with, but this Lapras could still be a threat with the potential of freezing. So let's see if Bedschibaer can get it and turn this game around, which is his main option really. We'll see if he reveals Sing, which would be a powerful surprise move here, or if he reveals a confused ray variant in which he has to hope for higher variability to work in his favour. And he does reveal Sing, but it misses due to its poor accuracy. We see Chansey Ice Beam, perhaps somewhat bizarrely there, but it would have pressured Executor coming in. As well as, I don't remember how low it is. Chansey's at about 26%, so I'm not sure if it's really in the range of 2 high Ice Beams. But it was... I think the aim there was to combine pressuring Executor if it decides to switch in, and pressuring Chansey if it decides to switch in, and doing actual something to Alakazam at the cost of being able to do anything to lap pressure that revealed Sing or something else like that. He chose not to T-Volt there. There's 2 possible reasons for that. One is that he doesn't have it, and the other is that he's hiding it. If he doesn't have it, then he might be in a slightly worse predicament than we first thought, in which case his first objective should be to paralyze Lapras, and then abuse Counter or whatever other tools he may have here, or Sting of his own. Or if he does have it, then it means that he wanted to keep it hidden because of the potential of having, say, a counter to hide. And also because it would be worse if he ended up versus Executor with it, although the Starmie is still pretty healthy, so Executor's not very threatening unless it has Mega Drain, which is possible. But yeah, let's see. I guess Ice Beam puts it in range of a Blizzard, even after like 2 Mega Drains or something along those lines would be my guess. But okay, so that's roughly why that time happened. Now that Sting's revealed, will we see a Thunderbolt or a Body Slam or something from Lapras or a Blizzard? There's plenty of options, all with slight upsides and downsides. The chance of freezing Chansey, the ability to do decent damage whatever happens, or the ability to prevent a Thunder Wave or Sing coming Lapras's way. And main possibilities on Marco's end are to stay in with Chansey and hope for another Sing miss and go for a Sing or Thunder Wave of his own, or he probably doesn't have Sing since he might well have used it there if he thought Executor was going to come in. If he didn't, then Thunderbolt would have made well, it's hard to fully say what the chance he has actually, which is why keeping that information hidden matters. But yeah, let's see what happens. A freeze here would be gigantic. Okay, he goes for the Starmie, which is at 82%, and we see a second Sing. Starmie takes that comfortably. Damn, I'm hungry. Damn, is there any way to pause this? I guess not. Well, whatever, you get me. Unfiltered, unstopping, but kinda hungry. Alright, Ethan. Come on, niggas. Oh god, I sound so white when I say that. I should not use that word. God damn, I do need a pause button on this thing, don't I? So Beds' options. Beds can go Chansey. Well, they can't go Chansey really, unless he thinks Starmie's going to recover, which is unlikely. And so it's too low to take 2 attacks from Starmie. He could go Alakazam, which isn't very comfortable versus the Starmie, but it should be able to force it into recovering. And it's unlikely anything Marco's got will want to be taking that. He'll probably want to be taking Alakazam's Psychic PP stalling that out. Or beating it down with Psychics and Blizzards. Should he go that way, which is the more defensive route, which would be avoiding Lapras getting paralyzed, which would be a big deal. Or the alternative here is that he goes in for Thunderbolt, prays for a full paralysis or a critical hit, or for the Starmie to go for Recover or some sort of misclick or even a 2-5-5. So that's the more aggressive option perhaps, but ultimately whatever happens, Marco's best play is probably just to stay in here, especially since he decided to bring in the Starmie in the first place, which indicates that staying in is probably his plan. Doubling to Taurus or something wouldn't be effective versus the Alakazam, which is the most likely thing to switch in. It's unlikely he has anything else that's going to be a great double switch in there, unless he happens to have a Rhydon, which I don't see as likely. Alright, so let's see. But that might explain somewhat the Ice Beam play if it was a Golem. Aiming to hit Ice Beam on Exeggutor, since wearing it down will be really helpful for Golem if that's what he does have. So also I feel like if Marco has a Zapdos or maybe a Jolteon in the back, he's in a very comfortable position. In fact, I'd even be comfortable with Raichu here. If it was Seismic Toss, probably. I don't know, it depends on the set, but okay, he goes for a Psychic to pressure a possible switch in, such as Chansey. Yes, Starmie was likely to Thunder Wave there. So that's interesting with the Spec Drop. Lapras probably can't quite make the KO at that point versus the Starmie. But Starmie could fully paralyze, so it does give Beds the upper hand momentarily, but at the same time he definitely wants to switch out Lapras sooner rather than later to relieve the Spectral. So let's see what he goes for. Okay, it's a very bold play considering he has nothing to block Sleep with other than that Starmie. He risks it there going for another Psyche, which would have done immense damage to Lapras, but on the other hand I think it would have let Taurus clean up, so I suppose that's probably the thinking behind that play. But the Starmie isn't actually that valuable if it means that much damage on Lapras, and Psychic means that Chansey can't switch in on that, as we've now seen. So that was probably a slight misplay by Bedschibaer, unless he wanted to sat the Chansey to get in Alakazam safely, which is possible, or even Exeggutor in safely without a Spectfall if he's happens to be running Mega Drain or something. But yeah, if he's going for getting Alakazam in, then a straight switch to Alakazam could well have worked fine, I think. Yeah, so, but it seems that Starmie was unlikely to Thunderwave there, although Recover was, I think, what he was expecting. He already tried to take advantage of, but since the successful Psychic on that Lapras would have been so valuable, it made more sense to go for the Psychic since it prevents Chansey causing trouble in this exact scenario. Now I've got the paralysis game. Let's see if Starmie can avoid fully paralysing here and get rid of the Chansey. He decides to double into Taurus, and I don't think that I agree with that. Chansey's in Hyper Beam range but not Body Slam range. Taurus is in range of a Chansey attack. And Lapras only does do a critical hit Hyper Beam and not a non-critical hit one. However, it does keep the pressure up. Since if he goes for a Hyper Beam here and Lapras comes in, he loses Taurus, and if he body slams here, and Chansey stays in, he loses Tauros. On the other hand, if Beds gets it wrong, then he's in a bad state. Although I feel like Marco maybe could have had a more reliable approach to closing down this game, since he does have a very strong position with that Tauros, and Beds is Tauros down. Let's see what he chooses to do. Does he stay on or does he go Lapras? It's a difficult turn for Beds, and the control is all in Marco's hands. I suspect that maybe if he has a Zapdos last, then a Body Slam would be the perfectly correct play here. Since even if Tauros goes down, then Zapdos can follow up for the KOs. Although Alakazam could switch in a pinch, but it's not really going to be worth it, since it strongly risks losing Alakazam, which would be his last hope versus Zapdos. Just my thinking behind it. So yeah, I personally would have stayed in there, but let's see. Does he go? He goes Alakazam, which is in range of Hyper Beam, and down it goes. So he decides that Alakazam was worth less than Chansey here. And so that was a straight up sack, and he's going to go to Lapras to follow up and force it out. Which is threatening here. Niggas, I'm fucking hungry. Alright, we see Blizzard. Stop Starmie coming in. Yeah, it's a sensible play, I think. Mario doesn't really have an awesome response to it though. And the best thing is Chansey, but if he wants to avoid the freeze. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that play by Marco. Now he gets a Sing Off, unless he has a Zapdos, but he does reveal the Zapdos. And is now deeply, deeply threatening. He has to decide between his Exeggutor and his Lapras, who's going to fodder itself. And the answer is obviously Exeggutor, since Lapras is... well, it's probably Exeggutor. I think it's Exeggutor, but I can't vocalize it. No, okay, he stays in. So it lives at that health, I wasn't sure. Zapdos could well have thundered, possibly. That assumes that Tauros basically cleans up now, so I think that he had to fodder off Exeggutor, so as not to be body bagged by Tauros afterwards, but he was in a terrible position, so this might have been his only hope. And he gets a powerful power, and that's pretty much game over. Let's watch it play out. That's a convincing first game victory by Marco. Let's move on to the next one, eh? That is, if it'll work. Looks to me like it's broken. That's not good. Well, I guess we get game 3. I'm just going to finish this up, I'm sorry. Alright, game 3. Since obviously there's some issue with the replay for game 2. But game 3 and game 4 should be working nicely, so let's see how this one goes. We see a Jinx from Beds and an Alakazam from Marco. Beds bringing the first sleeper lead. The standard play here is Alakazam, Thunder Waves, and then spam Seismic Toss, weakening Jinx as much as it can before Alakazam gets slept. Psychic also has some benefits, since if it gets hit by a Spectfall, then it means that Snorlax can follow up quite comfortably without having to risk a Chansey to a potential Blizzard Freeze, as well as generating more momentum early game. Beds has been unlucky so far though, and his Alakazam has managed to almost entirely knock out his Jinx, and at 12% paralysed with low special, he absolutely wants to follow up as fast as he can, not give the Alakazam any time to wake up if possible, which isn't technically possible, but so he wants to either Tauros or Snorlax here to force the Alakazam to switch. But now the ball is in Beds' court to gain momentum early game. Instead he goes for a Blizzard, playing for a Freeze. It's an option, but I don't like the chances of risking Alakazam waking up. Jinx does work fine as a fodder anyway. So, went for the Blizzard, hoped for a Freeze, didn't get it, probably sacrificing Jinx here. No, okay. Saving it as fodder, going Chansey. If it's a Reflect Chansey, then that makes a lot of sense. It is, but Snorlax self-destructs, and this game is 5-5, although in some ways it's effectively 4-4. No, well, yeah, 4-4 really. But Marco hasn't gotten sleep yet. So the likely thing is possibly an Exeggutor here from Marco's end to get sleep. Although I don't know if it can KO Jinx always at that health. It does depend perhaps a little bit on the set, but we'll see what happens. With Beds is probably doing whatever his best response is to that, whatever he wants to take sleep, which is probably this Exeggutor, since he's already gotten sleep. Goes for Stun Spore, Sleep Powder misses, Stun Spore misses again. Okay, Exeggutor gets slept. So Beds probably has Tauros, Snorlax, and another Pokemon. Whether the other Pokemon can handle Exeggutor is an open question, but the Marco reveals a Stun, which is very dangerous. Snorlax is his only real response to it, since it can respond to just about anything, but not very well. Especially Stab Psychics, but since Stun reveals Blizzard, and since it's not a lead, it's likely to carry Thunderbolt. Snorlax is okay versus it, although it doesn't have longevity. If Marco has a Chansey though, then I don't think that this Snorlax has got much potential. At this point, we'll see what Beds can do with it, but no, he reveals a Rhydon, so it's a Chansey-less team, which I have seen this particular variant around a little bit. Let's see what it can do. But with Exeggutor slept, this Rhydon is dangerous. Let's see, Earthquake there. Tauros in, but yeah, I think Marco has a fairly comfortable position, although it does depend on the last. If Beds is carrying a Zapdos or something last, then he is in some doo-doo. Doo-doo. I doo-dooed. But yeah, that Rhydon's pretty dangerous, but the Tauros is somewhat keeping it in check. However, Rhydon plus a Starmie is very difficult for Tauros to break in terms of, well, It's not very difficult for Taurus to break, but it's harder than most cores that you find in RBY. So we'll see what he can do. He goes for Blizzard. We see Alakazam being followed, which makes sense, since Beds almost definitely doesn't have a Sleeper last, and Exeggutor, Slept, and Jinx is down. So it makes sense to go to Starmie to regain some more momentum, paralyze the Tauros, or Blizzard an incoming Snorlax. He goes for Thunder Wave, so to just get as much damage as he possibly can, and then Blizzard to follow up, since Hyper Beam KO's there even after a recover, so it makes sense to just get the damage and run. He goes to Taurus of his own, Body Slams, full para, and Marco's in a strong position again. Is he going to do something about... Okay, Exeggutor takes the self-destruct, went there to take... Oof. And went there to take a possible Earthquake aimed at Rhydon. This is going to be tricky for him to... Okay, he predicts an explosion from Exeggutor and takes it with Zapdos. But unless he gets a first turn wake, this game is over. He needs a first turn wake, he needs Body Slam, not to fully paralyze or critical hit. No, it can't fully paralyze it, but it can critical hit. And then he needs to get off a successful Sleep Powder next turn. And he probably wants to be a Mega Drain variant or something as well, so... Yeah, this game is now won for Marco, basically. And that's game over. Okay, so that was convincingly won by Marco as well. Just all-round consistent play. Just edged Beds out. Even though he didn't run a Chansey, so that was some masterful play there, as well as a positive matchup. Alright, this is the final game. We didn't see game 2, but that was a game where Bedschibaer won. So I think you can probably tell the result now, knowing that it's a best of 5 series. But let's watch it anyway. Hey, because it's fun. We're seeing some great games so far. So we see another Jinx from Beds and a Starmie from Alakazam. A Starmie from Marcoasd. Oh, goodness me. I've been up a long time, and yeah, I'm gonna go party later. Anyway, so usual responses: Thunder Wave, throw off as many psychics as you can with Starmie, sit in there, try and wake up, try and force a Spectful so that you can cause damage with Snorlax straight away instead of risking Chansey to a freeze. He decides to pack it in though and go Chansey there, predicting Snorlax or something to come take advantage of the sleeping Starmie. That he doesn't. Instead, he stays in with Jinx to try and fire off some blizzards and get a freeze, but he gets a lucky couple of full paralyses from Jinx, as well as a lucky critical hit, so Jinx gets to fire off nothing at Chansey. He goes Snorlax there on another full para, so that Jinx again achieved next to nothing outside of sleep, which is useful but not the be all end all. So it went roughly 1 for 1. Let's see what the rest of this game brings. So we see Snorlax in, Beds switching into that Snorlax. Again, we've seen this before, this means Marco has the advantage in this matchup. Both may well have Chanseys though, which can do something here. But we see a Hyper Beam there, taking out the that Snorlax. Bringing in Exeggutor, which can threaten mostly a power psychic, and that's about it. Chansey comes in, takes it fairly well, but a critical hit and Spectfalls, which is about as bad as it could have been, and it's still at 50%. He goes for stun spore, which hits, lands. He does land a soft boiled. He gets to fire off. He gets to rest, which you can use to block sleep later in the match. But at the same time, it is huge Taurus bait, which has both its upsides and its downsides. You see Reflect Chansey though, but he gets brutally critical hitted. And as you can see, the luck is not going Beds' way in this match, although it's far from over. He is down quite a bit. With a Jinx, which is not very useful, 3 other Pokemon versus an almost full team of 6 on Marco's end, with a still fairly healthy Chansey, although it's paralysed, Snorlax, although it's lost a bit of health, and a sleeping Starmie. So overall, Marco's got quite a lead, around about a 2 Pokemon lead, I'd say. And it's going to be hard for Bedschibaer to even the score. But it is possible. Executor has Explosion, which if he takes out the right target could maybe, depending on the matchup, do something useful, but it's hard to say. In comes Tauros, which is what Sleeping Jinx does, is it invites Tauros in, but he decides not to double switch there. Tauros body slams and it brutally critical hits Executor, putting Beds in a bad spot, but he goes to a Zapdos to soak the Hyper Beam. Tauros decides to stay in as Drill Peck there, trying to do damage to a possible. Rock switching it critical hits though and does decent damage to Tauros. Or possibly a chance of switching as well, but switching into Thermo even though Thermo there. Zapdos seems to be somewhat threatening in this matchup, which means the Bed still has a shot since no Rock type's been revealed, which would have been quite possibly game over in some ways. This game, I don't think Bez would be able to overcome that, but Zapdos is a very good Pokemon, and when there isn't a rock, it's practically S-rank worthy, so we'll see what happens. But Bez is in a playable position, but he probably needs some luck going his way as well as some great play, especially versus someone like Marco. So firing off Drill Pecks, but Snorlax comes in and takes it pretty well with its high defense stat. Marco retaining momentum nicely there, not risking anything, can body slam pretty comfortably here. There's not much wants to switch in, and then can follow up with a Hyper Beam. As again, nothing wants to switch in. Tauros can safely revenge kill here, which is nice, but he's down 3 to 5, and if you ignore Jinx and Starmie, it's more like 2 to 4. And those 2 on Meds' side aren't great at taking hits, really. So this is very much in Marco's favour now. But he goes to Jinx, but the rare Alakazam counter makes an appearance, and that forces, he managed to exploit that Tauros switch in beautifully, since Alakazam forces a Tauros out later in the game, and it's high damage, and since Jinx is sleeping, it can't reset the sleep counter, so now Jinx has to go down here. That was a huge choke, Marco. You should have countered again. That was the perfect play. Oh, come on, Marco. Yeah, that was a choke. Ultimately, it doesn't matter, but it's more fun. I mean, it punishes Beds more if he decided to switch to an Executor there, say, which he shouldn't do because of the counter, but if he did, you'd want to counter into the Psychic there, so in comes Executor now. But yeah, this game is, it's a tough spot for Beds, although he Hyper Beams, and he's got to play for freezes, crits, and everything he's got. But yeah, this Tauros is very dangerous here. Goes for the Psychic and takes out Tauros. He perhaps predicted a counter there, which would have completely demolished that Executor. But yeah, this is fairly convincingly won again by Marco. As I say, it's unfortunate that Game 2 didn't appear to save properly, so we didn't get to see the one game where Beds won, and see how admirably he played, or whether he got lucky. Who knows, I can't say I didn't see the replay. But yeah, this is convincingly won by Marco, who brought a beautiful explosion Alakazam that worked very effectively in this match, and brought him a comfortable victory with an overall age to start with, only improved upon. So, well done, Marco. Congrats on being the RBY World Champion 2016. It's a great achievement amongst many that you have. It shows you're still absolutely on top of your game. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed. Some good quality narration of some fun games. Two of the best players you'll ever see playing in the finals of one of the biggest and best tournaments you'll see. Come and join Pokemon Perfect and join our tournaments. One day maybe I'll be recording a video of you, or maybe someone else, since I'm not the only person who will be using this channel. Anyway, so thank you, and I'll see you another time.